Hello, everybody. Welcome to another very exciting, in my humble opinion, episode of Observable Flutter. I bring you today an unexpected layout that I didn't think was going to be the layout. I was looking for this.
Surprise.
Yeah, spoiler alert. I'm joined today by Felix Angeloff. Felix, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on. I'm Felix. I work at Very Good Ventures as an engineer on the OSS and tooling team. And I'm excited to be on the stream talking about Mason today. So thanks for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me switch myself to a coherent thing here. All right. So Mason is a project that I think a lot of folks probably, maybe folks in the live stream today already know, but hopefully for posterity, there will be a lot of viewers in the future who maybe are new to Mason. So why don't we start by even talking about the kind of problem that Mason solves
hmm
and how it goes about it and why you built it.
Yeah, we can do a quick history of Mason. So maybe some viewers remember way back there used to be a tool called Stagehand, which was maintained by the Dart team. And that is kind of, I think, folded now into the Dart CLI tools.
Yep.
Yep. And so Stagehand was kind of, for those who aren't familiar, it was just a way to basically spit out pre-generated projects for all kinds of things, like a new Dart command line app or like a new server, new package, etc. And we thought that was super cool. Like I was always a huge fan of this. And the main reason for Mason was the question of like, it would be really cool if we could take Stagehand, but customize those templates without having to fork the tool and without having to modify all those templates by hand, because the command line tool was very tightly coupled to the templates. They were all kind of bundled into the command line tool itself. So basically, Mason kind of just tries to solve that problem of, can we have a reusable command line tool that just understands how to take a template and spit out some code based on that template without being coupled to the template. So anyone can create their own templates. They don't have to remake a CLI tool from scratch or fork an existing tool. They can kind of just focus on creating the template and then just use the same tooling to consume that template or share that template with their team. So that's kind of at a high level what Mason does. So you can think of it as like a custom Flutter create or Dart create, basically, where you're in charge of the templates and you can customize those as much as you'd like.
Yeah, I like calling it a custom Flutter create or Dart create, though it can be more granular as well, which we'll
Yes.
get into. But yeah, that's a super helpful way to think about it. And this, all the boilerplate that the old Stagehand library and now the Dart create and obviously Flutter create, which we've all used 1,000 times. All that boilerplate is, this is a very universal problem. So this kind of tool, like a lot of different development ecosystems have realized the need for this tool, as you just realize, you write that same boilerplate for the 14th time and you're like,
Yeah.
why am I doing this?
Yep. And even across languages, like across different frameworks, like there's like a create React app, there's a create whatever Svelte, there's a Flutter create. Like all these people had to make separate command line tools to kind of do similar things. So Mason's goal is try to kind of solve that problem and make it so that's one less thing that you have to maintain, and you can just focus on the stuff that actually differs. So just the template itself is really the thing that you're really messing with as a developer who uses Mason. And yeah, you have some links open.
Yeah. So for anyone who thinks this sounds like a quicker way to get going, the place to start is brickhub.dev. So Mason is the package. Correct me as soon as I say something precise here. Mason is the package that we download on our machines and run, and it has its own CLI. And then the individual templates, kind of have a cheeky little name of bricks.
Yep.
So BrickHub is where folks can upload their bricks to share with others. If if you've got like a starter template or a starter project structure that you think works really well, or a feature structure that you think works really well, you want to share it with the world, this is where you go to upload it. Or if you don't, and you just want someone else's good idea that they shared with the world, this is where you go to download their good ideas. So Brick Hub is kind of the center of the Mason universe, right?
Yep. And I already see a question about private bricks. That's a really good question. So at the moment, you have a couple of options, like Craig kind of mentioned, when you're creating your own brick. Option one is you could just bake that brick into the project that you're working on. So if you're working in like a GitHub repo with your team, and that brick is like really specific to just that project or just that team, you can keep those bricks locally as part of the source control for your larger project, and then just use local paths to reference the bricks, which we can look at in a second. The other option is you can use Git to kind of share bricks. So you can just reference bricks via Git URLs, just kind of like with pub.dev or npm. So those can be private or public repos. They don't have to be just public ones. And then Brick Hub, obviously, the easiest option is public only. So you have to be okay with, hey, the thing that I'm publishing on here is not containing like IP for my company or secrets or anything like that. Like, you have to be careful because when you publish something to Brick Hub, it's widely available to anyone, and you kind of want to make sure that it's a generic, reusable thing that doesn't contain any sensitive information. So those are some options, but there might be more options in the future. As of now, those are kind of the three main options.
Yeah, and I hope to start in this session actually making a brick that is maybe just kind of feature, like scoped to a specific feature in an app that would be kind of exactly, David, like you were saying, something that a team could just kind of settle on, maybe iterate on every now and then, obviously, and agree, hey, every time we add a new screen to our app, the first thing that we do is we run, Mason create. What's the verb? Oh, make. Mason make.
Yeah.
Mason
We just
make
had
our
this discussion the other
name.
day. Should we have an alias that's like Mason create for people who are used to that? But yeah, it's Mason make at the moment.
For people who have it right on their screen and still can't figure it out.
It's okay. It happens to me as well.
So that's actually kind of funny. Whenever I can't remember my own commands, and I'm like, maybe I didn't choose the right command, but the alliteration is nice.
Yep.
Well, let's get started. I don't even have Mason installed on my computer, so we're gonna go from hello world to doing all the things, making our own bricks and using other people's bricks, and we're gonna start with the actual installation, because I have a completely fresh Mason environment, which is to say a non-existent Mason environment.
Just perfect. And already, I think one thing to be careful of that I've seen people get confused by is, as you mentioned, there are packages on pub.dev for Mason, and one of those packages is called Mason, and one of them is called Mason CLI. So whenever you're doing the pub global activate command, make sure you're activating Mason CLI and not Mason, since Mason doesn't contain the command line portion. So I've seen that as kind of like one area where sometimes people accidentally use Mason. So just be careful, I guess, if you're doing this, copy that command from the docs, or just keep in mind the CLI is what you want.
Yeah. And then that brings in with it this command. So you don't need to activate Mason on its own.
Yep, exactly.
All right. So initialize Mason in the current workspace. Talk to me about, I think some folks, we've all run Git and init. So, there's like, I think just about everybody will have at least some reference point for what might be going on here. But walk me through exactly what is different before and after I run Mason init.
Yeah, great question. So at a high level, it just creates a file called a mason.yaml for you in whatever directory you're in. And that basically allows you to quickly start using bricks that are just scoped to that directory or subdirectories on your machine. And that's great for the case that we talked about, where maybe you have an existing project that only that team is kind of like working with those specific bricks. It's not a global brick that you want just available anywhere on your machine. Mason init allows you to just get started with local, like with scoped bricks, basically. So yeah, at a high level, it just creates a single file called a mason.yaml file. And you can create that file manually. Mason init is just a shortcut to do that. Kind of like npm init creating the package.json for you. That's how I would think of Mason init.
Great. Okay. Especially that npm init package, whatever JavaScript calls that file that you just said.
Yep.
That's perfect. So I'm going to run it now, Mason init.
Yep.
And now I'm going to run ls again.
Yep.
And we see the new Mason lock and mason.yaml.
Yeah. And you should have pre-configured one example out of the box, which we should see in a second if we open up the YAML file. Yep. So you can kind of think of this as just, just like a pubspec.yaml, except instead of Dart or Flutter packages that you're defining bricks and where they live or what version you want to use of that brick.
Okay, so let's use this hello brick and see it in action. So we were just talking about how it's not Mason create, it's Mason make.
Yep.
So I would write Mason make hello, right?
Yep. And you should have autocomplete as well. So that's something that we can verify later. If you type Mason make and then all
three commands.
And that's all thanks to Henan, who I think is on the stream, and the CLI completion package. So if you're building any CLIs out there and you want completion, it's one line of code that you add to your CLI, and it's really, really nice.
That's incredible. Yeah, I wanted, if they'd said anything, I wanted to click their name and give them credit. We did have one question. Majid said, share your background, please. And then it was shared. Nice. Not even by me. So somebody behind the scenes is being very helpful. It is a really delightful image, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So Mason make hello. I'm pressing enter and it's asking me questions, which is very helpful. But well, I don't know. Do you think now is a good time to talk about the questions or should we just continue?
Maybe we can quickly just go through the flow and then come back to how it knows what questions to ask.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll certainly get to that when we build our own brick. So, all right, name. So this is the default name of Dash, which is great, but I want to see a non-default name be committed, so I will use my actual name, and that is it. Okay, so it generated one file sitting in the current directory, and
that's it. We're done. So
yeah, well, that's good stream.
That's basically end to end using a brick, and this hello brick is published on BrickHub, so that's why we're able to use a version to reference the hello brick. Yeah, I think if you search hello, you should see it. Yeah, it's just like a super simple example brick, but it basically kind of shows you that end-to-end workflow. So you can add bricks to that mason.yaml file either manually or there are some commands. So if you want, we can look at the commands to do that. And then once you have bricks installed, you can use them just by running mason make. And you can also see what bricks you have installed as well, which we can look at too. If you're not sure, maybe over time you get a lot of bricks on your machine and you don't know what's what, you can do mason list or mason ls, and it will show you the installed bricks that you have.
So anything that's on BrickHub, it seems like we can target in this very simple way. We don't have to pre-download it. We don't have to think about any headache. It'll go fetch it and then immediately start building.
Yep. Yeah. So if we didn't have that pre-populated mason.yaml file, you could just run mason add hello, and Mason will just go figure out what's the newest version on BrickHub and then install it and add it to your mason.yaml file. So we can even try with a different brick if we want in a bit,
or presumably I could just delete this, save it, and then say mason add hello, and it'll write it back in there.
Yep.
And it nuked all the comments for us. So
it nukes the comments, but yeah.
All right. Nice.
Yep.
Cool.
Do we want to maybe undo really quick and go back to the comment version? Because I think maybe to shed some light on the private bricks comment, we can uncomment the Git URL based one so that we can kind of see how that works. But
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And
so
I
the
think
comment said, keep going.
Go ahead. You go.
I was going to just read the comment. Yeah, bricks can also be imported via Git URL. Uncomment the following lines. So we can see here, this is another name. And instead of specifying the version, we're specifying this meta information. This also very familiar, like Python install packages, Docker, like this all, should seem pretty familiar to folks.
Mhm.
So yeah, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say, so once you've done this, you will need to run similar to pub-get, mason get to fetch
Mm,
the new dependency, or you can use the extension for VS Code. But I think we can maybe start with the CLI. So you'd have
okay,
to run a mason get, and that will kind of go back through the mason.yaml file and compare and see like what's changed. Do I need to fetch anything from various locations, and then install whatever it needs to.
got it. Now, first, I'm going to forget to do that, and I'm just going to
Yep.
run mason make widget, and we'll see what error we get here.
Hmm.
So it just says, this is the version of it's not installed.
And if you scroll down, it will tell you what the available subcommands are. So we just have hello.
Mm,
Yeah. And you
got
can
it.
also verify again just by running mason ls or mason list to see that widget's still not in there. We only have hello for now.
Yep. So mason get,
Mason get. Yeah.
mason get. Okay.
Like pub get. Yep. And this will install and compile the bricks. And then now you should be able to list your bricks. And yay, we have widget.
Nice. Okay, so let's run mason make widget.
Now you have to come up with a
Ooh,
widget name.
you know what? It's our widget, Felix.
All right. All right. I like it.
All right, so we have a new file and the widget.
Oof. We need to update that to use
Oh
the
yeah,
super
super params.
yeah,
Yeah,
params. Someone can open a PR.
get that contributor badge. Cool. All right, so we've seen. Obviously, this is more or less again hello world level
Mhm.
complexity. This one very explicitly hello world.
Yep.
And do you think it's time to make our own? Actually, that's a conflicted word. We're hitting a
To
collision.
yeah, to
Should we build?
create, build.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Our own brick. Okay,
Yeah,
let's do
yeah.
it.
I think it's time. And we can circle back to some other topics that we might want to cover later are like everything that we've done so far is a locally scoped brick. So like if you left this folder on your machine and you tried to do Mason make widget,
Mm,
you wouldn't be able to do
somewhere
that
else.
right now. Yeah. But we can cover that after. I think we can take a look at how to create a brick first.
Okay, yeah. Um, it's funny how often something like this happens. Train of thought says, "I was just about to start learning Mason," and wow,
You can thank Craig.
serendipity. Well, you can also thank Felix for making Mason. All right, so it's time to build our first brick. How do you get started when you're doing that?
Yeah. So first of all, for everyone who is worried that they have to memorize all these commands, don't worry. You can just go to the doc site. So docs.brickhub.dev walks through everything that we're doing for the most part. And like creating a brick exactly. This is what we'll be doing now. And there's a command for that, obviously. And fun fact, Mason uses itself to generate a new brick. So yeah, it's a bit fun
That's
to think
great.
about. So yeah, the command for this would be Mason new, and then the name of your brick. And you can specify an optional description of your brick. And I think that's good for now. There's also some other things we can configure, but to start simple, I think we can just use Mason new and come up with our
Yeah,
new brick.
absolutely.
Mhm.
All right, so we were talking before the show about having the first brick that we write be something that aims to be a feature in our app.
Mhm.
So I think new feature is a reasonable name for the brick.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
What was it again? Oh, literally new. Okay.
Yep.
Mason new. Oh, should we do new feature or new feature?
uh,
Or new
we can do
feature.
we can follow Dart conventions since probably most people watching are used to underscore. It doesn't really matter though.
Oh, right, for packages. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. New feature. So we
And
have,
yep.
oh, sorry. You
I
go.
was gonna say, yeah, and it'll generate a couple of files for us. So they should all be under a new folder called new underscore feature. You can also customize the location for where it generates the brick via the -o flag.
For output.
Yeah, for output. But yeah, we can maybe quickly take a look at what's generated.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna open up this, and because we ran this in the root of our directory, we've already kind of incidentally dodged the lib directory. But when you talk about being a little more specific and putting the brick in in a spot, I could imagine having a bricks directory.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Usually in projects I've worked on, we just create a top level bricks directory that contains all of the bricks.
Let's even do that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. So I'm going to remove new feature, and let's make a directory called bricks.
You don't even need to do that. You can just specify -o bricks, and then it'll throw it in there. But this works too.
Oh, get out of here, other bricks. Okay, so we had a new feature. Here we go. And now we just say bricks.
Yep.
I'll do it.
That should work. Yep.
All right, I see the bricks folder, and I see, and it just jumps, it skips right into new feature because it's the only next folder. Okay, so the most interesting file here to start, I'm guessing, is the brick.yaml, but maybe not.
Yep. Okay, I think everything else probably most people are familiar with, like changelog, license, readme. Those are not specific to Mason or bricks. But please do remember to update those files if you are going to publish this somewhere, because it's pretty easy to forget. And then if you don't have a license, people might not want to use. Might not want to use your brick.
So not definitely a complete license.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the brick.yaml, let's look at what we've got. So the name, the description, obviously, update that to your liking. Now, the following defines a version number. Okay, so this is similar to a pub spec version.
Yep. Exactly.
Similar,
like a Dart package or Flutter package.
Nice, same rules. All right, environment. Walk us through this. What's going on in the environment?
So this is again very similar to like when you're working with Flutter or Dart, and you have that environment key in your pub spec where you can specify Dart SDK constraints or Flutter version constraints. This is basically telling Mason, hey, the user needs to have at least this version of the Mason runtime on their machine to use this brick. And that's so that you can use more advanced features that are maybe only available in newer versions of Mason as part of your brick. So if someone doesn't have, for example, in this case, at least 0.1.0-dev41, Mason will yell at the person when they try to use this brick and tell them to update Mason. Yep.
Nice. Okay. Variable specify dynamic values that your brick depends on. 0 or more variables can be specified for a given brick. Each variable has, okay, so we're looking at some variables, and I'm guessing that this is what drives those questions we saw when we ran Mason make.
And we even have the same one here, which is defaulting to dash and asking us for a name. Yeah, so this is kind of like where you would put all of the dynamic info that you need to collect from your users before you can generate the output for the brick.
So let's add a question or two here. Maybe just like what is the name of the feature?
Yeah.
So the prompt here would be, what is the name of this? And we want the class name probably, or I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a couple things we might want. We need the screen name. We need
it depends on what our feature is going to look like, but yeah, maybe we can derive some of that information from the feature name. Like we can probably infer the class name and make it snake case, for example. But yeah, it really depends.
Yeah, so maybe we even pause and brainstorm what kind of feature structure we want. So what's like a simple feature structure that you like to use?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the structure we tend to follow is every feature is under the lib directory. So we would have like lib/feature name. Yep. And then within a feature, we usually have a subdirectory for the UI for that feature, which we call view, but we can call it anything. And then another directory at the same level that contains the business logic. So for us, if we're using block, that would be like the block or a qubit directory, but it could be like your provider or change notifier or whatever is driving that feature. Yep.
So we'll use block right now. I don't imagine you'll object to using block. So
fine by me.
Did you call that folder block?
We call that folder block because we consistently just use block for the most part. But I mean, we can make it more generic, call it like logic. Doesn't really matter.
Sure. Okay.
Yep.
So does this seem reasonable? We're gonna nest. Oh, whoops. Wow.
That's cool. That is cool.
Random pseudocode nonsense that I wrote, it folded. So we have, that was really surprising. Maybe it's must just be close enough to YAML. So in the lib directory, we're going to add a new folder that's going to be a feature name that we have to ask for. We're going to create like a barrel file that'll export everything. And then we'll have our screen widget and we'll have our logic. And then we're going to need a file down here as well. So maybe we'll call this feature name block. And then now, interestingly, we're going to a few more things, although maybe we can derive them. Do we need to ask specially what to call, this is going to be something like feature name screen. It's going to go in the code eventually, and it's going to extend whatever widget. Can we easily derive a different casing?
Yes. Yeah, we should be able to do that.
Just one question.
Yeah, and we'll take a look at how to do that. But yeah, if all you need to do is adjust the casing, for the most part, you don't need to add a whole nother variable for the user to answer. You can infer that, and we can take a look at how to do that using something called lambdas, which Mason includes. So
nice.
We will get there. Yeah. Anything else that you think we need in our feature?
Well, I think it'd be nice to have, even if it's a little contrived, just some kind of Boolean that opts us in or out of something. So maybe we just say, does this feature have state management? And then if the user says no, we don't generate any of this.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Sometimes you just have like
a splash screen,
static UI. Yeah, exactly, with no state.
All right. So the prompt for this is, what is the name of this feature? Now description here. Where does this appear later?
Yeah, so that will appear when someone is trying to make that template, if they use the -- help flag. So if you were to write Mason make hello -- help, it will tell you all of the variables that Brick needs, and then the descriptions for each one. And it'll also include some more metadata there. But yeah, it's mainly for if someone's not sure how to use that brick, those descriptions will come in handy. So try to be as descriptive as you can to make it clear what that variable is for.
Got it. Names the folders and files. Well, it's really folders, files, and I like a good Oxford comma, classes in this feature. And it's definitely a string, and the default is probably not dashed. What if we don't want a default? We want the person to...
We can omit the default entirely if we don't want a default. All the default will do is the user can just hit enter to accept whatever the default is, so that they don't have to type anything if they're happy with it. But we can completely remove that key. And yeah, then there will be no default. Also, I notice in the comments, there's already a PR for the super.key update to the widget template.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that was fast. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. But keep paying attention. You're going to miss good stuff. So the next thing, I saw Boolean up here. So I'm pretty sure if we want to have, uses state management, this would be a Boolean. And, maybe we say determines whether this brick generates state management boilerplate. And does this feature require state management classes? All right, I think we're already...
Looks great.
We're moving along here. So I'm going to get rid of this. Actually, I'll comment it out. You may refer to it. Now, of course, if anyone is following along from total scratch at home, they're probably wondering, where do we start to specify these things in a real
Yep.
way?
Yep. Yeah. And what are those curly brackets that Craig
Yes,
has typed?
as
uh,
foreshadowed with. And
yep.
that all goes in this underscore, the dunder brick directory, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So that you can kind of think of that magical directory as just the output of what will get generated when someone runs Mason make new feature in this case. So everything that's inside that folder, whether it's one file or many files or directories with more files in them, everything in there will be generated. And those curly brackets are mustache templating syntax because Mason is using the mustache template package right now from pub.dev to do some of the replacing of variables and conditionals and that type of thing. So it's a pretty lightweight templating syntax, but you can do many things with it. It's still pretty powerful. Yeah, I think that we can start by maybe do we want to just keep the hello.md and make sure that everything's wired up and like
Oh, sure.
output some of our values, or do you want to
Yeah, we
dive
can
right in?
say, well, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, let's say hello feature name,
Hmm.
and this is a great idea. And now we're in our root here. So
Okay.
we need to let's review brick.yaml. No,
Yep.
not brick.yaml,
Mason.
mason.yaml. And there's no new feature yet. So how do I add it?
Yep. So you can from the command line or manually do it. From the command line, it would be Mason add the name of the brick, so new
Hmm.
underscore feature, and then I think it's dash dash path. Yeah, let's use the dash dash path.
That's the brick.
Yep. And then
And now
yeah,
we can say
brick
bricks,
slash whatever. Yeah.
new feature.
Yep. And this should just install and update the mason.yaml. So now we have three.
Right.
So if you run mason ls, we should now see we do have
New
new
feature.
feature in there. Sweet.
There she blows. Okay.
One other thing that's
This
worth maybe mentioning is you can also remove. So if you maybe don't
mm,
want hello or you don't want widget, you can do mason remove and then just the name of the
RM or full
brick.
remove.
I think full remove. We can add an alias. It's a good call. Yeah. And
There should be a whole alias for hello, for Mason remove hello that is just Mason goodbye.
that's another good
And this
idea.
it's a terrible idea.
Mason hello and
Mason
Mason
remove.
goodbye. Yeah.
I'm saying
So
Mason goodbye equals Mason remove hello.
hello. Yeah.
But that's unnecessary. Okay, so we got rid of it and Mason ls, and we just now have new feature and widget.
Widget. Yep.
All right, so it's time to use new feature. Mason make new
Moment
feature.
of truth. Yep.
All right, what is the name of this feature? Well, it
Hey.
is,
Okay.
hey, does this feature require state management? Ooh, nice. I don't think it does.
All right.
And
This is good that we're seeing this. So
yeah,
yeah, so whenever you're using Mason to generate new files, Mason will obviously do its thing if there are no issues. But if there's already a file that exists with the same name as what you're trying to generate, it will prompt you and say like, hey, there's a conflict. How do you want to proceed? So you have a couple of options as a user. You can just say, I want to overwrite the file. So capital yes will do that for everything. If there are multiple files with multiple conflicts and you don't care, you just want to get the latest and greatest stuff, you can just do capital Y to do like yes to all. Lowercase y is just yes for this one instance. N is no, so skip overwriting the file and leave the file as it was. And then A
abort.
is append.
Oh,
Abort. That's another good one, I guess. You can always just kill the process if you want to abort. But
mhm.
yeah, A is for append, which is a rare case. I'd never really had to use it. It's not something that you often will have to use. But if there is a case where you just want Mason to append the new output to the end of the existing file,
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
you can use A. So yeah, there we
Uh-oh,
go.
we didn't get a
So
here.
that's good. So that means that there must be something wrong with our template. So maybe we can
Oh, that
flip back
okay.
to
Yes, 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 of course.
Let's take
Brick
a look.
hello.
Feature underscore
Oh, I
name. Is
did
that
do
what we
this.
called the variable
I thought.
in the brick.yaml?
I was hoping the tab was still
Oh, we
open.
just called it
Oh no,
name.
it's just name.
Yeah. So that's something you have to be
Right.
careful of. Mason by default runs in this like lenient mode. So if it can't find something, it's not going to blow up and crash. It will just do the best that it can. So in this case, it was like, I don't really know what variable you're talking about, so I'm just going to leave that blank. But yeah, now we can try one more time. And the nice thing is you don't have to reinstall or anything. You can just remake. Yep.
Because the installation would just download the files, but because we're
Yeah.
editing local files,
Yeah,
it's
there's
just
nothing to
installed.
download. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Make new feature again. The name of it is A again. Still no. That'd be crazy. And we're going to append. And I meant to have the
And
file open. Where are you at? Down here.
hello.
Hey.
Cool.
All right. Great.
So maybe another
Read the
thing
file.
while we're doing this that's worth talking about is you can probably quickly see how it would get annoying to always have to fill in the prompted questions over and over and over again. Like maybe you already know in advance like the variables. So you can provide those directly as command line options. So we can specify, the name of the variable followed by the value of the variable. Do we still
I'm
call, do we
guessing,
call it name? Yeah.
yeah, we're at name now. And I'm guessing this, oh, these are in YAML. So these should be machine friendly names, like no spaces,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
That'd be
Yes.
crazy
Yes.
talk.
Well, if there
So
were
the name,
spaces, you could, I guess, wrap in quotes. Yeah, you'll probably have other problems though. And if your value has spaces, I would wrap it in double quotes as well. Yeah.
get all the escaping.
Yeah.
So we'll just call this take 2.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't supply state management, it had a default of no. So will it use that?
It will still prompt us because the
Okay.
default is just in the prompting phase. So
Got
yeah, we can
I always forget
make sure we have
which
the right name.
new feature brick uses state
You
management.
picked a long descriptive name.
Sure did. And this is no.
So
run it.
yeah, we could try that. Yeah, let's.
Well,
so you can
good
see
sir.
that it didn't prompt us for anything, which is good. So, and you deleted the old file, which is why we don't have a conflict.
Yep.
So
And so it just says
all
take 2.
all is good. Yeah. And then one other thing that I think is worth mentioning is like if you didn't delete this file, you don't have to deal with the manual conflict resolution over and over and over again. So if you rerun this file with a different name, maybe take 3, for example, you can specify a conflict resolution strategy. So you could do on dash conflict, I believe. Yeah. And then you can specify overwrite or append.
Append is good.
Yeah. Did it work?
Oh.
Did we do append? I think
A
we
is
just
not
did
allowed.
A. Maybe autocomplete failed us there.
Well, I just typed A.
Oh,
we
okay.
have to write append. Okay.
Yep. So now,
Nice.
you don't
All
have to deal
right.
with the manual conflict resolution, which is handy if you already know that you don't really care about what's already there. It's kind of like the build runner delete conflicting outputs flag for the Dart users out there.
Except unlike, build runner, you're often going to immediately start changing the contents of your generated file. So I don't actually imagine, I imagine no is what people pick most of the time because it's like, I'm not still using the raw generated file. I've put a ton of stuff in it.
Right. Yeah. These are all meant to usually be things you edit, like you mentioned.
Yep.
And one other thing, since I think someone asked this in the comments or someone mentioned this in the comments about using a JSON file. So we've seen like the 2 ways so far to provide variables are either you can just run Mason make and let Mason ask you for everything. You can pass the arguments as options. And the third option is you can specify a config file that is just a JSON file that contains all of the variables that brick will use. So if you have like 50 variables in your brick, it would probably be really tedious to both manually specify them or even add them as options to the command line. So in those cases, we can create a config file and use the config file instead.
Oh, nice. All right, should we get building?
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. So we're in our brick directory, and we really don't want this hello file anymore. So I'm going to delete this.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that we said was that we were going to go in the lib directory. So do I need to add a lib directory in here?
Yeah, that's a good thing to really keep in mind. If you want your brick to be really opinionated, and you're assuming that the user is always going to run this from the root of their project, and there will be a lib directory. If not, it'll create a lib directory. Then yes, you should bake the lib as part of the brick. If you want it to be really flexible and not make assumptions, then I would omit the lib, and then it's kind of up to the user to specify where do I want this code to be generated.
And they run Mason make in the correct location.
Yeah, or they can specify the -- output directory or -o flag to Mason make as well. But yeah, I think that maybe for our purposes, we are pretty opinionated about how the project is going to be structured. So it's okay to include the lib as part of the brick.
Yeah. My thinking for this first part was we pretend we're a team, we're working on something, and this is a brick that we're just going to use.
Yep. Then lib, great to me. Yep.
Okay. So now we need to create this part, the feature name folder. And so what we do here, if I recall correctly, is we literally write this as a folder name.
Yep. All right. And now, if we were to just run this right now, we'd get a lib folder with another folder inside that has the name of the feature that we've specified.
Okay. So let's see that happen in lib. We
don't, because Mason excludes empty directories. So I think we need to have something in there. Yeah.
Well, let's put that barrel file.
Yeah, there's a feature request for supporting empty directories, but at the moment, make sure you have something inside. So
I want to make the barrel. Where did that go? Oh, it jumped to saving the file that I was in the middle of typing. So I wanted to make this file here. And so I'm again using this templating language syntax and specifying, the feature name is going to go in here. We'll obviously replace the curlies as well, but then it's still .dart.
Yep.
And another cool thing, right? So now we can start adding stuff to this file. So here I can say export view and feature name screen, I think we called it, .dart. And obviously this won't pass the smell test. For the linter.
I was going to say, one thing that we could do to avoid getting yelled at by the analyzer is we could exclude the bricks from our analysis options. That's something that we usually do, I believe.
I like that.
Yeah.
I know. Honestly, I have to look this up every time. Do you happen to remember off the top of your head?
I believe it's analyzer and then exclude. Is it exclude or excludes? I forget. But yeah, bricks / Let's see if that works. Maybe it's excludes.
Oh, very good guess.
No, it is exclude then. Okay. Oh, maybe it's a list, so you need the dash in front.
Oh yeah, definitely. Hey, there we go. Nice.
Cool.
Like I said, definitely look it up every time.
Yeah. Same here.
Cool. All right, now when we run it, I think we should see some interesting things.
Yeah. Let's give it a shot.
Ran.
Still nothing. Did we save? Do we save all?
Yeah. Brick lib.
Feature name. Oh, it's name, right? Not feature name.
Son of a gun! I keep doing this. I've just got to change
it. Yeah.
Great stuff. All right.
It's already gotten us like 3 times.
Yeah.
Now we need to update.
Scale cache here?
No, now we need to update the.
Oh, because my command, I just wrote name. Really making this look hard. Okay, feature name. Big money, big money, big money.
Yay. Okay, we got something.
All right. Take 3 and take3.dart. Now exports take3 screen.dart.
Sweet. Which doesn't exist
Now,
yet, but we'll get there.
doesn't exist yet. So I want to go back, and I don't know how much chat has responded to this, but I think we've just seen enough that it's maybe time to go back to David Simeon's question from 20 minutes ago.
Mhm.
He says, I'm kind of old fashioned, which is something that I really, like, gosh, that resonates with me. I have to ask, what is the advantage of using Mason bricks over just creating my Flutter app directly?
Great question.
Well, do you want to talk first? What do you think?
Sure. I mean, yeah, to me, the advantage is that Mason hopefully gives you a pretty easy way to customize your Flutter project the way you like it, without having to kind of clone the same repo and delete a bunch of code every single time, or run Flutter create and then delete all the comments and restructure things the way you like. It's just that little extra bit of customization that you can kind of use to tailor either the project or the feature in this case that we're building to fit the needs of your team or you individually. And you don't have to like constantly go back and do a bunch of manual steps of replacing variables and cleaning things up every single time. So you can obviously not use Mason and apply those changes yourself, but it's more meant to just be like a time savings, but also a consistency thing. Like, for example, the brick that Craig and I are working on now, if we were more than a team of 2, if we were like a team of 100, it'd probably be really like beneficial to make sure that everyone's creating features in a consistent way without having everyone have to figure out every single time, like, what does a new feature look like? Let me copy one from somewhere else in the code base. And then maybe they copy like a legacy one that is deprecated and we're doing a new structure for features. Like those types of things, I think you can kind of mitigate by having bricks for those reusable chunks of code. But I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Craig.
No, I think that was consistency was the big one that I wanted to get to. I mean, time saving, quite obviously, the more work we put into this brick, the more we get back every time we use it.
Yep.
So right now, we're getting a little bit back, one folder, one file, and an export. But we're going to get more back as we continue to layer things onto this brick. But man, that consistency detail is just such a big one.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. I don't know if we want to. Do you want to take a look at some of the other questions?
Yeah, take a second look at them. Sure. Yeah. Any of them jumping out at you?
Let's see. There is one about using Mason in CI/CD.
Oh yeah, I saw
which
some
is
of that.
Kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll certainly let you field that one.
So I'm not sure if I fully understood the question, but there's a couple of ways you can use Mason with CI/CD. One is you could use Mason to actually generate your CI or CD workflows, like your GitHub actions or GitHub workflows or your code magic config or whatever you're using, Fastlane. So that's one thing you could definitely do. Like you can create a template for that that asks for all the right info and plops those things in, and you have a ready to go config. The other thing that you can do though is you can validate things in CI. So for example, if you're using Mason to generate, like one cool use case in my opinion is using Mason to generate workflows for packages. Like if you have a monorepo and you usually have like one CI workflow per package, you can create a Mason brick for that. And you can validate in CI that, hey, we didn't forget to generate a new workflow for all the packages, so that if a developer adds a new package, they don't accidentally forget to generate a new workflow. And the way that you would do that is by running Mason make the name of your template and then set exit if changed, I believe is the flag. We can double check. But that will basically, yes. So that will basically run Mason make. And if there's a diff after running that command, it will exit with exit code 1. So you can verify in CI if someone forgot to generate code using Mason, if you have that kind of workflow set up. So those are, I think, the two main ways that I've seen Mason work with CI/CD. I'm not sure if you had any other things to add or.
No, I think that all certainly makes sense. I mean, there's no doubt that you've shipped 1,000 times more Flutter code than I have. So in terms of
Nah.
CI/CD, I think you've kicked the tires.
Yeah,
There was,
we do a lot of CI, and actually, like one member on the VGV team, his name's Marcus. He maintains the GitHub Actions Dart brick on BrickHub, which does exactly what I described. So it will auto-generate some workflows for you based on your project structure, which is really nice. Yeah. How did you get a list of suggestions?
yeah, just I wanted to hit this one real quick because we did kind of gloss past it. But Felix had mentioned that this package has tab complete, and so I just pressed tab twice, and this showed me
That
all the
will
things.
work for ZSH and Bash. Other shell support is coming soon, hopefully, or you can open an issue. Again, the package that's responsible for this is called CLI_completion, and is maintained by us at VGV, but mainly by Henan. So shout out to Henan again. I think he's in the chat somewhere. But yeah, this is the package responsible for that. So if you're building your own CLI and you want that same behavior, it's really, really easy to add. You don't have to build from scratch.
And that is, oh God, that is such tedious nonsense.
Yeah.
Everything about shells and terminals is just like.
Henan spent a ton of time, making that really easy to use and work on various shells. So yeah.
I believe that.
I think there was one other question about extensions. Can we generate files using extensions? And I believe this is referring to VS Code or IntelliJ support. And the short answer to that is, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. Keep going.
I was going to say the short answer is for VS Code, there is an extension, but there is currently no plugin for IntelliJ. That's something that is hopefully going to come soon. But yeah, if you search Mason on VS Code, if you're a VS Code user, you can install the extension and you get some nice goodies. Like every single time you save your mason.yaml file, it will automatically run mason get for you and fetch the latest bricks. And then you also get schema validation on your brick.yaml. So like if we go to our brick.yaml file and like mess it up, like change Boolean to something nonsensical, yeah, you'll get yelled at and say like this isn't a valid brick.yaml file. Yeah, so that's kind of handy. And then the coolest thing in my opinion is you get some commands. So if you do command P, you can just type Mason and you'll see all the options. So you can install bricks, you can initialize Mason in your current workspace, remove bricks, and then when you have all the bricks that you want, you can either do it this way through the commands, or you can right click in the file structure on the left hand side and say I want to generate a new brick, which I think is the much more convenient way.
So I would do that in the this
root,
directory,
I guess. No, I would do it in like the root.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Maybe these.
Yeah, that will work. It will just put it inside of our brick. It'll put the output inside of our brick.
It's not where we select the brick.
Yes.
See. I thought we were selecting.
So I think in our case, we would probably click on just like a top level file.
Anything. All right, we'll click on pubspec.yaml, see if that works. Where are you at, pubspec? There we go. Okay. Oh no.
Yeah, it won't actually. Yeah, it has to be a directory. So actually, this is a bad example because we need to be one level out in order to use our brick right now. You can do it. Maybe click on lib and generate in lib. It'll just generate a new lib inside
lib folder.
Yeah, but at least you can kind of see the workflow. So
nice.
Pick,
that's pretty great. We'll do widget real quick because that's not going to make the new lib.
Yeah, that won't mess up.
And this is our widget again. We're a team.
Yep. And then we
let's go.
Yep.
Nice. And we see a little foreshadowing here. I only typed the Pascal case, our widget, but we got snake case on the file name. So that obviously can be done.
There. Yes.
All right. Great questions. There was. What do you think? Are we ready to continue?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything else. I think, we can keep going probably, unless you see anything else.
Yeah, we'll have some time at the end too, where we can kind of go back. All right, so we had, what was this? View. Oh, and then this is in the brick itself. Yeah. So maybe we just, I remember now. someone had asked, yeah, here it is. James says, and this is absolutely the next thing to do. Can you show the condition for creating the file? Let's do that.
Yes, let's do that. The best way to figure out how to do that is, I think, to refer to the docs again. So brick syntax is, I think, what we need. And then we have conditions, or conditionals is the top section. So yeah, there's a syntax that, if you're familiar with Mustache, you should be right at home. So if you have a Boolean value, you can use the hashtag name of the variable and then closing to render something if that value is true. And then you can use the caret instead of the hashtag to render something if that value is false. So I think in our case, we don't need the caret. We just need the hashtag syntax. Yep.
Yeah. So how do we do that for an entire directory? Is just the name of the directory and then it figures it out?
Which gets a little wonky because you're technically creating a subdirectory because of the closing tag. But yeah, we can right click on lib. This is how I would usually do it. Just right click on lib, new folder. Actually, we want a new file at the end of the day, right? Or do we just want the folder?
Let's do the folder. Let's do the whole thing. We're gonna have the logic directory.
Yeah. So then maybe we should do. I think it'd be easiest if we just do a file and go all the way down, and you'll see why.
Okay. So start with the file.
Yep. And so here we can just basically do that full syntax. So the curly brackets, hashtag, the name of our Boolean value. Okay. This is going to get long. Now the name of our directory, if that value is true.
If the value is true, and we're putting the name of the directory, even though we're creating a new file.
Yes, because we'll get to the file as well. Yeah.
We called it logic. And now closing the tag.
Need to close. Yep.
Right. And this is just the variable name.
Yep. And then we need the slash whatever our file is going to be called as well.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stress that out.
So now this can be feature name, and then we were going to call it block
or underscore block, right? Yeah.
Yep. .dart.
Yeah. So if you hit enter, hopefully we got it all right. And then let's just throw some stuff in here just to make sure that this is all working. And the reason the reason it looks weird is because of the trailing slashes. Technically, those are new directories. So that's another thing that we're working on, trying to see if we can simplify, because Mustache isn't the most friendly for working with file names. But yeah, don't worry if it looks crazy, because yeah, this is correct. Like, it should generate everything that we need, and we can verify that by just adding some. We can just put
some whatever.
So
class, and this will be feature name, and the feature name
block. Yep. And that's,
we even import it, but we don't have it in our pub spec yet. So all right, so actually that's irrelevant.
That's fine for now. Yeah. So
all right, so if we run this, is there like can we put a little filter on here? How do we change the casing of this?
Yes. So again, if we go back to the docs, there is this lambdas section. So there's a bunch of built-in ones. Yeah. So we can convert something to snake case, Pascal case, title case. And if you scroll a bit further down, there's a table of all of them, all the supported ones that are built in. Yes. Yeah. So.
Ooh, great.
Yep. There's a lot of them.
Mustache case.
Yeah. That's handy for CI workflows.
I can imagine. All right. So I think we're ready.
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Now, will it raise conflicts for files that already exist but have identical content?
No, it should not.
Amazing.
It will. Yeah, it will just continue as normal.
Right. So Mason make. This is new feature and feature name is still take 3, and now use the state management. Let's just do it with no to start.
And let's do false. I believe false is what it will expect, like true or false.
My N didn't. No,
it might work. I mean, we can test it.
Right. Yeah, I was Oh no, N, yeah, N is my type because it was the YN
Yeah,
combo
but
thing.
internally it resolves that to a true or false, and the mustache operates on true or false. So I believe I don't know if maybe it's going to be smart enough. I honestly, we can test it, but I would use true or false for Boolean values in command line
All right.
options as
This
a.
is mad science, not recommended to do at home.
Oh,
We
we have
have a different issue.
unclosed tag. Oh, we missed the slash before uses state management. It seems.
Uses state management.
So we have the
Sorry,
hashtag uses state management, and then
Yeah, yeah.
the closing tag is missing the.
Oh, I put the slash here, but it needs to go here.
It needs to go right before uses in the second one. So where the hashtag is
Yeah.
on the first one. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. You can
All right,
think of that as
so
like kind of HTML-ish, like
got it.
open and closing
Goes here.
tags. Yep.
Is that right?
Yep. Now let's try one more time.
So it
Yay.
generated, and it didn't.
It generated lib
Oh, it did make logic.
logic.
That's literally right
Nice.
there. Now the logic
Let's
is
see what's
not in
inside.
take 3.
Yes,
But
logic is
logic
not in take 3, which.
is a surprise.
Oh, but that makes sense because we put it outside of feature name. It's just in lib. So we need to drag that.
So it did what we said.
Yeah, we just need to
All
drag
right.
that whole thing into feature name. Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Yeah, we can try
The
one more.
old "you listen to what I told you" problem.
Yeah, the computer's always right.
Delete. Okay, let's run it again. Here we go.
Yep.
So we've quadruply now ruled out that N is valid.
N is
It
incorrect.
which you were like, Craig, it's not going to work.
I was like, I don't think it'll work, but I'll be pleasantly surprised if it
Okay,
does.
so false.
Yep.
And it generated
Yay.
nothing, but true, it will regenerate it. So really, if you don't type false, it'll because N was obviously
it's a truthy value. Yeah, I think is how it's interpreting it.
All right, so now we have our logic, and this we have the Pascal case.
Nice.
Worked.
Yep. So that's all looking good.
Yeah. All right. We could kind of continue to like iterate on this and add more stuff, but I actually don't know if there's a ton of value in throwing more gobbledygook in here, unless there are specific types of gobbledygook that we haven't gotten to yet. Because we had conditional folders, we've massaged the value names to be a class name.
I think if we go back to the docs, like there's some other things that I don't know if we need to go in depth on them, but just for people to know, for brick syntax, you can loop. So if you have an array of values, you can have loops in your templates. And that is similar syntax. So hashtag the variable name that's an array, and then you need the closing tag. And then you can reference the current value or do other stuff like apply lambdas to that value, etc. So that is something that you can do. And partials, I guess, at the very bottom, those are like a really more advanced thing. But like if you're generating something that always, I think a good example is like a copyright header. Like let's say you're generating code that you always want to have the same copyright header, kind of like the Dart code has that same like license by all authors. I forget how it's worded exactly, but if you have like a consistent partial template, then you could extract that into its own file, and partials are denoted by that little tilde inside of the file name, and then you can reference that in multiple templates, and you don't have to copy and paste that same code over and over and over again. So if you have like a header and footer in this case, that's a way to kind of avoid having to repeat yourself. But those are more, I think, advanced use cases. I don't think that'll really come in handy for us unless we really want like a copyright header or something.
Yeah, that's a nice feature though. I like it. So yeah, let's see. Is there anything else here?
Yeah, maybe we should look
at
hooks? I was gonna say, And that might actually help us get closer to a finished product because we decided we're going to use block. There's just so happens to be a brick already for generating a new block on BrickHub. So we could use hooks to generate some of that code ourselves if we wanted to, using an existing template. And at a high level, hooks are just you as a developer for a template can write some code that either executes before or after Mason has generated the code, and they're written in Dart. And you can do all kinds of things in there, like generate prompt for new variables dynamically, or access the values of variables that the user has specified,
Add some
or
more variables.
add some more stuff. Yeah, modify stuff, run processes like formatting the code or installing dependencies or whatever. So there's a lot of things that you can do in hooks if we want to.
Yeah, let's add block to the pub spec.
Sure, yeah. Sounds good. So
in
we
our
already
brick,
have we already have a brick, but it's worth calling out that if you didn't already create a brick, you can do Mason new, the name of your brick, and then -- hooks, and then it'll generate a brick with hooks already pre-configured.
Okay.
But it's okay. For our purposes, we can just create hooks. And I believe that needs to be it needs to be outside of the brick folder. It needs to be at the top level of the brick. So like at the same level as the brick.yaml.
Oh, that's where I thought I was putting it. Yep. Did it move there? Okay, there we go. Nice. Yep.
And then
good eye.
This
is
is
meant to put it.
Oh yeah, sorry. And then this is just a regular Dart package. So we need a pubspec.yaml. I think we have a typo. Pub.
I'm sure I do. Pub
spec.
Edit. Where are you at? Where's rename? How do you even do this? How do you computer? Pub spec.yaml. All right.
Yep.
Oh, so now I can see the value in generating it with the hooks.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if you wanted to, we could just generate a new one and copy it over. It's not really much code, though. We just need like the name.
Yeah, I'm going to see what's there.
Sure, yeah.
So Mason new.
Mm-hmm.
Should I go into bricks for this? That'll probably be easiest, huh?
Yeah, that works. You can also do the -o, but yeah, this works.
The dummy
and then -- hooks. Yep.
Okay. Now in our bricks directory, we have a dummy folder which contains hooks, which I
can just
steal.
copy over there. Yep.
Please replace. And now the dummy one can buzz off. All right. Yeah. Goodness, I did not want to generate all this. Okay, so even this was more than I wanted to type.
Yeah. It's not much, but it's still convenient to generate it.
It's not much, but it's honest work. All right, so post-gen, we want to just steal exactly what's in the. Yep. So this is just raw Dart. There's nothing.
Yep. Nothing special
about this. It's
nope.
Yeah. A lot of this obviously is special. This is special, but this is just raw Dart.
Yeah, and the context is just how you can access Mason specific APIs, but everything else is just raw Dart. So
do we have to do Flutter pub, or do we just can we jump?
I think it's Flutter pub add, if I recall correctly. Maybe there's a shortcut.
Like whether or not you're supposed to use pub or not, sometimes you get barked at if you do it wrong. It's either anyway. Add Flutter block.
And then I think we need to import Dart.io as well. It helps if you're
for the process.
Yeah, it helps if you just open hooks in its own VS Code window. You'll get better feedback. But
yeah,
and I think we need to make the run async as well.
And then we'd say pub get to actually install that package that we just ran. And let's see if it works.
Yep.
Anything that you're anticipating we definitely are missing? Process.
No, I think. I mean, we're not really getting any feedback, so we won't really. I mean, if it fails, we'll still know. But
I want to use the cool. I want to hook
progress
into
API.
the output. Yeah. He didn't add it so we could not use it. All right, Mason.
Also, we're in bricks.
Mason make new feature. Actually, let's just do Control R, new feature.
Yep.
And there, I think this is pretty good.
Oh yeah, and I think Randall's calling out that we don't need the get since pub add already
just does it.
does it.
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks, Randall.
Also, yeah, good call. Also, we, if we were being coherent with ourselves, we would check context dot use the state management.
Right.
And we
And
wouldn't
not
do any of this. That was
yeah,
false.
not install it.
Yep. But now let's go to our top level pubspec.yaml and enjoy our brand new Flutter block
Yay.
dependency.
That worked.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. I feel pretty good about this brick that we've made. We're using it locally. We already talked about how, if we just committed it to our repository or any, if it was a team-wide thing, obviously having it on my machine is not good enough, but we've seen how to just pull it down from any Git URL. So I think we've successfully made a brick, and now it might be time to use someone else's brick and see that workflow.
Yeah. Well, I noticed people are asking about using remote or local brick as part of a different brick. I don't know. Do we have time to quickly look at that? Yeah, because that's one thing I was trying to mention earlier about, like, we could technically use the existing block brick on BrickHub and just reuse that code without having to write it ourselves.
Okay, I like that idea a lot.
So that could be interesting. Yeah, so that second one, we could just hook into this existing brick. And the way to do that is via either pre-gen or post-gen hook. We can probably do that pre-gen. I guess we can do it post-gen.
Yeah, post seems reasonable to me.
The only issue is like the conflicts with the existing file that we're generating, because we'll have the underscore block already there.
Well, I think in this example, why don't we we should just back out of doing that and go all in on
totally. So we can wipe out the uses state management folder in our brick entirely.
Oh, right. And then we'll just conditionally do all of that here. Nice. Okay, I like that. So we're going to delete all of you.
Yep.
And now how do we access this again? I thought I saw context.vars somewhere. Oh, yes. It's because we don't have a thing.
Maybe open up hooks in a new VS Code window.
So bricks, new feature, hooks.
Yep. And then we'll get some better IntelliSense.
All right. So now here we will get a little more space for ourselves. Art pub get probably, right? No Flutter.
Yep. And then
post-gen. Okay,
now you should get some feedback.
If context.vars, nice. And this was uses state management. We're going to do all this stuff.
Yep. And the way that we can basically access existing bricks and generate code from existing bricks is by creating our own Mason generator. So we can just create a new variable called generator. Maybe we should do that. I guess we can do it last. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And then assign that to Mason generator. Nice. And then instead of using the default constructor, there's a named constructor called from brick. Yep. And so now here we can pass any brick. And brick is another object that we have to create. And you can see that they're named constructors. So we can tell it a brick from Git, a brick by path, or a brick by version from BrickHub. So I think we want the third one in this case.
Nice. This is good.
And then you can even pass any or latest, I believe. I think latest is, yeah.
That'll be good.
Yep. And I think that's async method. Yeah. So we should await that. And that will give us a generator back. And then all we need to do is call generator.generate. And then we need to tell it where to generate. So the target would be a generator target, which we can use the directory generator target. Yep. I think we missed it. Yep. And then that takes a location. And I think in this case, we can just use the current target directory. So you can just pass it directory.current because a hook's current directory will always be the target directory.
Nice.
And then vars is the other thing.
Got it.
So
Okay.
we need to
So then
know.
we just look
Yeah. Mhm.
over here. So name and style. Okay.
Yeah. And we can just hard code the style for now. And
Yep. I like that
the
idea.
name we can figure out.
So the name, though, isn't that context
Yep.
vars feature name?
Yep. Exactly.
What are you upset about? You need to be a string.
Yep.
And then the style.
We can
This
just
looks
do
like a
basic, I think. Yeah.
basic.
And I think we just need to await generator.generate.
Sure, that is async. Yep.
And if you really want to get fancy, this gives you back a list of all the files that were generated, so you can have some nice
Print them off.
output. Yeah.
I absolutely want to do that. So that was the progress.complete is no longer appropriate up there.
Mm-hmm.
Just do something very simple here. So for final file in files and context.logger.
And then you can do context.logger.info or .detail.
Okay. Yeah. What are those two seem similar to me.
Yeah, detail is going to be like that grayed out, like less urgent looking text.
Okay.
So yeah, that's probably fine. Yeah.
Path.
Mm-hmm. And you also have, for advanced users, you also have like the status of the file. So whether it was newly generated, modified, identical, skipped, etc. So you do have some more info there, but we don't have to get crazy.
All right. Where are we? We're in hooks. So we've got to go back out of a couple directories here.
Yep.
Back into the root of our project. And it could be time to write new feature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is going to have a chance.
Fingers crossed.
Big money, big money.
Okay, so I noticed that we changed our pre-gen, so that's why it's recompiling, and same thing with post-gen.
Smart of it.
Installing packages. Uh-oh,
right,
could not parse the latest. So I was wrong. I think it's any. It was one of those two. It's always the other option. It's like when you try to plug in a USB stick and it's always backwards.
That one's wrong like 6 times first before it's ever right. Okay,
all right.
that worked.
So
we switch back to our actual project thing, VS Code window, and visit
the
take 3. And under logic, we have our old code.
That's still old code. Yeah. So it doesn't look like we got what we wanted. Maybe can we try just wiping out take 3 entirely and rerun to see where we're at?
Yeah. In practice, it does feel like this kind of building a brick on top of itself is only a development workflow and is going to be really rare for actual usage.
Oh, and also I'm noticing, I think we have a syntax error in our hook post-gen on line 5. So that
also, oops.
Unless that's unsaved. Yeah, maybe
this is the real one.
Okay, cool. And maybe we want to check if the value of use state management is true, because I think that's going to be that should work. That should work.
Well, vars is string dynamic. Actually, why did it even let me write this code?
Yeah, we don't have any analysis options configured in our hook right now, so
equals true.
I think it would be a Boolean value, so you don't need the string. But yeah, we can print out exactly for debugging purposes. And like you probably want to Well, yeah. Anyway, let's just see how far we get.
Yeah.
So it's pre-compiling, and it generated the code from our brick. Now it's running the post gen. It printed out the vars.
Okay.
So that looks
And it's
fine.
either a string or a.
Yeah, I think it's
we
a
didn't get the
Boolean.
type.
So I think that's correct. And we see it's logging installing packages. So it's clearly going into
Oh,
that.
yeah. Now, do you have any like global try catch that might be eating a problem down here?
No, there should not be. If any exception happens in a hook, it should get bubbled up
All the way?
all the way. So it is kind of strange.
Yeah, didn't tell us generated.
Yeah, maybe can we
I'm
log
happy
the
to
output
print more
of
nonsense. Yeah.
yeah, maybe let's log like file count and see. That could be failing on us, the generate. Well, we're not specifying a conflict resolution, which is okay. Maybe we should also specify file conflict resolution strategy.
Okay.
Because you probably want to overwrite anything that is already there. Yep. And then, yeah, let's just see. Trial and error.
Yep.
Compiled. Cool. Okay. So
Yeah.
we did get 3, 4. Okay, so it did work. Maybe the loop is incorrect. Yeah, can you check the lib directory? No.
Yeah, nothing in there.
Did it generate a block somewhere else? we should output where. Oh yeah, it's generating them at the top
level. Okay. So how do we specify where to generate? Oh, so
yeah,
directory.current must.
Yeah, so that's the current directory that we're running the brick in, which is the top level. So we just need to add the lib. So you can probably pull in something. You probably want to pull in something like the path package, so that you can do path.join.
No, Dart.
But we need to go into the hooks. I think you added it to the top level instead of to the hooks.
No, I'm in the. Oh, you're right, because this directory is not scoped to where this project.
Too many directories going on. Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, there we go.
Cool.
Yeah. Path. Now we can import package path.
Yep.
Is this one of the ones that?
Yeah, I usually alias it. Yeah, as path. Yeah, and then here we could do a path.join on yeah.
Yes, we need path.path.
Path.join, I think, should work.
Capital P?
No, just
we alias, so it wouldn't be
the alias.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, it's on the directory. Oh,
yeah, it's just a top level function. Yeah. And then I think we need to convert directory.current to a string. So we have to do .path. And then we can specify lib.
What is it upset about currently? String can't be assigned to parameter type directory.
We need to do a directory around that whole thing. I think you could just create a directory. It'd probably be better to like pull this out into its own variable. But yeah,
it's pretty gross.
It's getting too difficult to even read.
Okay, so
that could be the target directory, and then so we need to join with lib followed by our feature name, right?
Yeah, so context.vars feature name.
And we have access to the extensions here as well. So we should be able to do dots, or we should be able to make sure it's a string. So cast it as a string and then do like snake case. There's an extension on string that Mason provides. Yeah. And that will make sure that, yeah, we have a consistent structure. And then I think, yeah, we should just be able to use this now. I'm not sure why the for loop was failing us.
Well, it wasn't. No, it actually wasn't.
Okay. Maybe it's
Yeah.
because we're using logger.detail. Can you try changing that to info? Because it could be that the log level is not logging the detailed logs right now.
Okay. All
Let's
right.
see.
So that's not what I wanted to do. All right. So I'm going to delete these 3
Yep.
files.
Oh, and one other thing that we're gonna run into is I think it's gonna spit out all the block files directly under take_3 right now. So do we want to add another?
Logic.
Yeah.
Logic, right?
Yeah.
So lib logic.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Fingers crossed.
All right. So now we go back again. Actually, I'm going to stay in this directory here. This is where we'll run it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have focus where I thought I did. That was the most anticlimactic moment of the whole morning. Okay, so there we go. It's installing packages.
Yay, we have a logic.
Yay. All right.
Wait, but we have no content?
I was thinking this was a surprising decision to have empty content. Is there something, does the generator need to, is there like another method or something to actually populate the files?
No, that is quite strange, actually. It should have had the correct content, unless maybe there's some incompatibility. I mean, the best way to check is just install the block brick and run it and make sure that one's functioning correctly, because there have been a lot of changes recently with Flutter 3.7 and Dart 2.19. So
we'll do mason add block, right?
Yep. And then
I'm going to cd into lib take 3, which is just such a tortured name.
Yeah.
And into logic, and let's remove everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so nothing there. Now we can run, and we'll run it here, right? Because this
we can just run it here.
And assume any folders.
This one just generates where you are. Yep.
And that's why we had to, God, I keep thinking I need to change spaces. That's why we had to specify the path.
Yes. Yeah, because this one doesn't assume the whole lib structure that we did. Yeah.
Which is also a really nice thing to hit. You know, if you're making a brick to share, you can see how including any of these kind of surrounding opinions could make your brick less pluggable into other people's other people's projects. So now we'll say mason make block.
Yep.
What is the block name? Take 3. We're just going to call it ASTF. Basic.
All right, let's see. Do we have content?
We do.
Okay, we have content. Interesting.
This looks a lot more like what I expected.
We should try rerunning the hook. I'm curious, like maybe there was some weird hiccup, because I don't think that we're doing anything wrong in our hook. We're just calling generator.generate.
Okay.
Unless there's
not
some
optimistic. Remember, the computer's always right.
Yeah.
We're doing something wrong. We're doing something wrong. Close all these doodads. All right. So Mason.
Oh, actually, I think I might know. Well, let's just try it. I think I might know why it's failing. And I think it's because the block brick also has its own pre-gen hook. So, but try it one more time. Let's just verify, and then we'll see. Yeah, I know why it's failing. It is because we're not running the pre-gen. So this is a good learning point. So if you go back to BrickHub, you can quickly tell that the block brick is using hooks if you switch to the usage tab at the top. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you scroll down, it gives you some info on how to use it. And then there's that hook section, and you see it is using a pre-gen hook. And if you click on the Git URL of that brick at the very top, you can see there's that hooks folder, and we have a pregen. And inside of there, we're actually setting a bunch of variables that the template needs in order to run, which is why nothing's being generated, because those variables don't exist at the moment. So it's an easy fix. All we need to do is in our hook, and you should probably do this anyway. Before we call generate, we should call generator.pregen. Or generator.hooks. Yeah, dot pregen, the function. Yep. And then this takes the same stuff. So maybe we can extract the variables and the target out, because it takes working directory and all that stuff. Yeah, we can call that like generator target. Perfect.
And then final block context variables.
Yep. And we probably should make this a var instead of final. You'll see in a second why.
In a minute since I've used var, so this is exciting.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we add here, block context variables, and it was just a positional parameter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. And then let's do the same thing in pregen. So pregen needs to know what are my variables and where should I run. This one is just the working directory instead of a generator target. So you can just pass working directory as the destination.
Oh, is that a global?
It's just a named. It's just a named variable or a named parameter. Yeah, and then.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. Yeah, this is just like a process.run API kind of.
I thought this was positional. Sorry.
No,
okay, so working directory, and then I still pass the generator target. No, it was a string.
You should pass the destination. Yeah, the destination, which is a variable that we already have, right?
Nice. Yep.
Yep. And then I think we could just do path.
Oh, that was a directory. Did we have a thing? Oh no, it was all just baked in there. Okay.
Yeah, and actually, like for the purposes of this, it doesn't really matter. Like you could have just passed directory.current here, because it doesn't matter for the pregen, but this should be fine. And then the most important part is the pregen has a callback that gets called on var's changed. So that gets called whenever the hook actually modifies the variables, and that gives you the new variables. So we need to update our block context variables whenever that is called to match vars. Yep.
So just like this, essentially.
Yep, exactly. And then I think we can just await pregen, because that's going to return a future. And you probably should do the same thing for postgen, but we don't need to, because we know in this case block doesn't have a postgen. Yeah. So now I think we can do the moment of truth.
We can do it. Okay.
So a lot of stuff, which is hopefully useful.
Yeah, I mean, I've been feigning some ignorance here, asking you questions I knew the answer to, but boy, have we hit a lot of stuff that I did not know, including all of this. So
yeah,
this is awesome.
You can really go deep on, especially hooks. Like there's a lot you can do with hooks. But yeah, hopefully now the block brick has everything it needs to actually generate some real block code. Yay!
All right. Well, I think that is a end-to-end victory. We wrote our own block. Earlier, we talked about maybe just shopping around, getting a block off BrickHub and using that. But at this point, I think we've also really hit that. We've installed blocks from BrickHub. Yep. Now we've baked another block into ours and kind of passed all the wires through. So, man, this is great. We did it.
yeah, we came super far. I think we also saw how you can use Mason just as a package. And that's really helpful if you're building your own command line tools. You can still leverage Mason just as a dependency like any other package. So I think that there's a lot of cool things that you can build. And we have a lot of tools at VGV that are built that way, where It's using Mason internally, but we have our own command line on top, or whatever, some other APIs that hook into Mason. So you don't have to just use Mason as a command line tool. You can build tools on top of it as well.
Nice. All right. So there are a couple good questions we can hit here. I think after we get to a few of these, we'll be at a really nice breaking point. We had talked before about hitting some tests, but for me, once we got into it, it felt like it was going to be just more of the same of like, make the folder, make the file, put your base test in there. But to your point here, Jay, like, yeah, absolutely. And, maybe you don't include any nested folders. And so your workflow is, change directory into my tests folder, into my feature name, and then run Mason make
feature,
new feature tests. But absolutely, definitely can use. And now, will those tests have anything interesting in them? They will not, but you can.
They could. It depends on how complicated. Like maybe if you're really opinionated and your widgets always have like certain methods on them. Yeah. But yeah, it really depends.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the more opinionated you are in what you put in your brick, then the more opinionated you can be when you write automated, pre-generated tests for them. If you just have a widget, then there won't be many tests to run.
Right.
But that's a great question. Let's see. There were some other good ones. Oh, this one I think is interesting to kind of talk about as well. Kong asks, how can I append a method to an existing class? And
yes. So
you take it. I have a guess, but you'll know.
You can go first. I'm curious to hear, because this is good feedback, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So my guess is that, maybe you could do something with like a really tortured post-gen or something, but I'm thinking that this is basically outside the scope of Mason.
Yeah. So you're pretty spot on. I think we're exploring how to make that simpler. You can obviously use Dart APIs and your post-gen to read and update files and do all that stuff. Like that will work, although it will be really tedious and not flexible and not robust. It'll probably be like a annoyance to maintain. But one interesting approach that we're kind of experimenting with and using in some of our templates is using patch files. So I'm not sure how many people out there have used like the git diff command to generate a patch file. But basically the idea that we're kind of playing with is, let's say, like, for example, the use case could be, for simplicity's sake, like adding block to the pubspec.yaml. Let's assume like that pub add command didn't exist and you just wanted your brick to update the pub spec and add that one line. We're experimenting with, the idea of basically, if you make the changes locally, generate a patch file of the diff, a way for Mason to basically be able to use those patch files and apply the changes for you up front, so that you could do like inline updates to certain files or modifications to certain files. So long story short is, like what Craig said, it's out of scope at the moment, but I think that if we can come up with a reasonable way to support that use case, it's not off the table. It was more just one of those things that we didn't really want to add like a half-baked solution in. Like whatever we come up with should ideally be like really easy to work with and user-friendly. And that's a tough problem, in my opinion, the inline updates, because then you have to deal with resolving merge conflicts and other stuff that can happen over time. So for now, I think that's not Mason's strong point. Mason's strong point is more generating new files and content and not updating inline values. So, but stay tuned. Hopefully we can maybe have some solutions for that in the future.
Yeah, even just thinking about, don't even think about it from a Mason perspective, but just automating. Yeah. You'd have to have declarations of like some way to specify which files, which classes, which methods. And maybe the order matters. If the order doesn't matter, you're going to create a lot of Git headaches later to your brain. So
it's a tough problem. I know some people have worked around that problem by having like special comments or annotations that they put in their code, and then they look for those and try to replace them, which is another approach. But it doesn't always work. Like JSON technically doesn't support comments, for example. So it'd be really difficult to add inline values to an existing JSON file, for example. So I think there's some limitations of all these different.
I just had an idea though. I
Yeah.
think in the future, after views arrive, and I don't know
Mhm.
what views, for anyone who's not heard of them, are essentially kind of sticky extension methods. So an extension method, obviously many of us will know extension methods. You can add them to a class. Then you hop over to a different file and it's like, wait, where's my extension method? You have to import the file that defines the extension method because they're not sticky. So they don't automatically follow the class anywhere the class goes. You have to bring the extension. Now, views are just like extension methods, but they are sticky. So once you add them to a class, anywhere that class is imported, those new methods will appear. So what I imagine you could do is have a brick that was just all of your extension methods, but they're in a view.
Mm.
Honestly, this would still work with extension methods, but you just have to remember to import the extension method anywhere
More
else.
convenient.
Right. And you could simply, you could have a file of extension methods that is like pre-generated, do not modify, and it just has all these things. And if you ever added another one, you just rerun the brick, overwrite, and I think that would deliver the intended goal, right?
Yeah, it depends on what the use case is. I think that that seems like a reasonable approach for certain use cases. Yeah, I think it really comes down to, I would say, like, try working with the existing APIs, and if you run into a use case that you're not sure how to tackle, just open an issue, and that's probably the best way to have the discussion. Maybe there's an existing solution, maybe it's room for improvement, and it's hitting kind of like the bounds of what Mason can currently do. But either way, I think that people are pretty creative with how they use Mason. I've seen plenty of bricks that do lots of like really complex things, especially using hooks. So hopefully it's pretty flexible. And that's awesome to see.
You won over a fan. Great to see you, Randall. All right. Well, I think we've accomplished our goals that we set out to accomplish this morning, which is not my most elegant sentence. But Felix, thanks for joining. Man, this was really fun. I enjoyed catching up on all the latest stuff that you've been adding to Mason. Admittedly, I'd fallen a bit behind on the latest goodies.
Okay.
So no, this was a blast. And folks out there, hopefully you, like Randall, have been inspired to maybe whip up a few bricks yourself just to streamline your own process. It doesn't have to be for a whole new project. It could be a feature, obviously. That's basically what we spent this whole time doing.
Yep.
And even if not, just peruse what other people have uploaded. There's a lot of good ideas on BrickHub, and start making some bricks.
Yeah. And thanks so much for having me. I had a blast building our own feature brick. And if you build something cool, definitely let us know on Twitter or on GitHub or wherever. I think that sharing bricks is always super exciting, and I'm really impressed by some of the things that people create. You can create really, really complex bricks, or as Craig mentioned, like really simple ones. Like we mentioned, just a license file. Like you always create that pesky MIT license file in all your projects or whatever. So it's really up to, like, the limits are up to your imagination and like what you feel could optimize your workflow. So I'm always excited to see what people make. But yeah, this was really fun. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks. Well, that'll be it for us today. I think I'll be back next week. I haven't really given any thought to what that stream might be, but I hope to see everyone again in the near future. Oops, that wasn't the right slide. See you, everybody.